Good evening. Welcome in to the PowerMizzou.com podcast here on a Monday night, talking the 4-0 Missouri Tigers, even though if you listen to a lot of things, read a lot of things, it may not feel that way right now. Gabe DeArmond here on State of the Tigers. This is episode number 55, brought to you by our friend James Carlton at State Farm Insurance. His information is going to be scrolling across the bottom of the screen. If you're watching us on YouTube, the entire show, carltoninsurance.net. You can go to Facebook/Carlton Insurance, or you can give James and his people a call at 314-961-4800. You tell them you heard about it on Power Mizzou. He's going to make a call to your friendly NIL collective if you get a quote from him and make a nice little donation on your behalf. So everybody wins there. We're going to have James with us here in just a minute. Actually, I'm going to add two people to the show right now. See, this is magic. It's a 3-person show. James has had more important obligations, did not get the memo that we're not a sport coach show. We're more of a hoodie, maybe a polo show, but James is here to class up the joint. So what's going on, guys?
I typically do wear hoodies and T-shirts and so forth. I came from a wake, unfortunately. But yes, thanks for having me on this evening.
Yeah, appreciate, again, I think I said on the radio with you this morning, you were on with us 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I got a lot of, yeah, you're okay, and Jarod's okay. We like you guys fine, but we want more James Carlton. So We've got more James Carlton on the show. So, Jarod, what's up, man? How's things?
Just writing the column right now, getting that situated and trying to address people's fears and thoughts about this team. I see, James, your little subheading says Brady Cook apologies. So, yeah, trying to dive into that while people kind of lose their minds about their undefeated team.
So that's where I want to start. James, you are much more like a man of the people you talk to. You're a big Mizzou fan. What's we get the mindset of the message board, but that's not always necessarily the mindset of the fan base at large. Your friends, the people you talk to, what's the feeling here about this team?
The best I can think of is I remember after that Middle Tennessee State game last season, they're undefeated, but I felt very hopeless as a fan. I was not optimistic heading into that Kansas State game. There was just no buzz in the parking lot that day. There was no optimism. And then things came alive. And so we felt this feeling before where everything's still in front of us, yet optimism is tempered quite a bit. But the difference this time versus last year is we've seen it. We've seen this offense click. We know it's possible. We remember LSU, Memphis, Kansas State, Tennessee. We remember these games. So we know it's out there. I hope that was a big wake-up call because they are very fortunate to have won that game, as we all know. And I know Coach Drinkwitz knows that more than anybody. You could tell how relieved he was in that post-game presser. And I think that there's going to be a lot of egos checked at the door. And I think this is going to be a couple hard weeks of practice. And listen, if they go down to College Station and do what we think they're capable of doing on offense, that should be a win and maybe an easy win. But if they play like they did against Vanderbilt, they could lose by easily 2 scores to a hapless Texas A&M offense who really hasn't been putting up points. So I'm very cautiously optimistic. It's always good to have all of these things to worry about after a win, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they are 4-0. Everything's still on the table. I think Gabe and I would both agree, and Jarod, perhaps yourself, that 10-2, the way their schedule looks to be shaking out, I would say they're more than likely on the outside looking in. I mean, I think it's 11-1 or bust right now for Mizzou if they want to be in the playoff.
I think that's possible because I think they've missed a couple chances to make a couple of statements. Want to invite you guys watching along. We've already got some comments, questions, whatever you got, put them in the chat. We'll get to them throughout the show. So, Jarod, here's kind of, I wrote this a little bit. It's good to win with your C game, right? And I think Missouri won with a B- game against Boston College, probably more of a C- game against Vanderbilt. But here's what eventually, if you keep playing your C game, it's not actually your C game, right? Maybe that's your. So how many more games do we go before we say, hang on, maybe this is who this team is?
That's it. I mean, you got 4 games and then you have a bye week. How much more of a ramp up do you need to be able to keep playing the level they've been playing at? I mean, it's usually, to be honest, after the first couple of games, where you're facing, an FCS team and a team at the bottom of the FBS, like that's usually teams get a couple. You've now had 4. You've had 4 at home, so you're got the most comfortable conditions you can have for a whole month, and you're still struggling, and you've got a bye week. After that, it starts to become you are what what the product says you are, what your results are saying. So I think right now it's time for the turning point. There can't really be an excuse after this.
Yeah, James and I had an extensive, probably 2.5-minute pre-show meeting before Jarod popped on, and that's what I said. I said, A&M is the time that this team has to show it's not what it's been so far, right? And everybody here, at least, is clear. Like, we're not saying they're bad. They're 4-0. It's not quite what we thought it was so far. So right. A&M, with 2 weeks to prepare, is the time you come out, and this is where you go score a couple touchdowns and maybe don't have a game, right, come down to the last 2.5 minutes. Now, A&M's better than the teams you've played, but if they come out and it's 4 Blake Craig field goals and you're in a 19-16 game trying to survive a 2-minute drive at the end, then at that point, to me, that's who you are, and we probably need to readjust expectations just a little bit.
I agree.
Yeah. James was telling me A&M 4-point favorite. That's what you said, right? That's what the early line came out.
Mm-hmm.
A&M has played. I mean, they lost at home to Notre Dame by 10. They beat Bowling Green by 6. I was surprised by that line. You guys surprised by that line?
Yeah, I thought it would have been Pick'em.
Pick'em? No, I thought Missouri would still be favored. I mean, I know. Again, what Missouri has kind of put out there and stuff, and I know A&M has had a little bit rougher of a go. But are they not playing their backup quarterback?
Yes, but I think he's
doing
maybe better than the starting quarterback.
Legman.
Yeah, Marcel Reed ran for 91 yards and threw for like 240 last week against Bowling Green. He played pretty well at Florida. Like, I think he is now the starter, regardless of Wegman's healthy.
Did they just play Bowling Green this week or like this Saturday?
Past week, yeah.
Okay.
Past week, yeah.
So they barely beat Bowling Green, yet they're favorite. I'm going to assume that's just the Kyle Field advantage they're getting.
That's what I think it is. Have either of you guys been to Kyle Field?
This will be my first time.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's gigantic. There's no question, right? It's loud. Is culty a word? Am I allowed to say that?
Probably.
The press box sways. It's a thing, but also, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's not like the toughest place to play. People go there and win. Missouri's gone there and won. So I think it gets more credit for being a home field advantage than it actually is. And I don't want to spend, half an hour previewing Missouri, Texas A&M or something, but Texas A&M's got Arkansas this weekend. This is the type of game where with this schedule, I mean, we've talked about it for a year. Your season comes down to A&M, Oklahoma. I guess now I would say probably South Carolina has replaced Auburn. Like we thought maybe Auburn was in that group, but Auburn's a train wreck. I see no way Missouri loses that game. So if you want to throw South, you've got a 3-game season. And like James said, you might now have to go 3-0. And to feel safe, you've got to go 3-0 in those, unless you go down and win at Alabama.
Right.
Okay. I was about to say where you putting it, but I get it. And that's kind of the assumed loss on the road. So yeah, you've got to handle business on those other ones. But I think we talked about it last week. If they lose versus A&M, the Alabama game, like
it's a must-win.
Like it feels like house money if they go in 7-0.
Right.
But if they lose versus A&M, that's not really the case because I guess you would, if they still go 10-2 was that best win is Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
that's not going to
is
cut it.
so.
Yeah, that's not going to do it.
So there was a theory posted on our message board, and I'd be interested to see what you guys think of it. James first. Somebody on our board said maybe this team needs a road game. Like that team on Saturday night played like a team that is feeling some pressure. Played like a team that has expectations hanging over it, that knows what they are, that was at the end of a 4-game streak where everybody had said at the beginning of the season, you have to be 4-0. If you're not 4-0, this season's over. I mean, I've said those exact words. And I thought they played, particularly the quarterback, a little bit tentative because I don't want to be the guy that screws this thing up, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it'll do them some good to go stay in a hotel and go play somewhere where they've got 100,000 people screaming at them rather than playing in front of these 65,000 people just thinking, man, I hope we don't disappoint them tonight.
No, I think it's a really good theory. Reflecting on the Blues 2019 Stanley Cup run, they were nails on the road. And the guys have said, I mean, that's where they found their mojo, was on the road. And in the Stanley Cup Finals, they won games 5 and 7 in Boston, a very tough place to play. So I like this theory a lot. I mean, I don't think it can hurt. And maybe it does take some of that pressure off because, you could tell. I was watching this game. I wasn't there, but you could tell when the crowd is anxious and even some boo birds come out. That's probably worse than having 100,000 people screaming while they're on defense, So I like that there, and I can see that.
Yeah, I like what James just said as far as like it can't hurt. Like
Right.
maybe that works for them. Maybe having to be together, just the people on that Missouri roster, on the staff and stuff. It's just you're not going to have, I mean, you'll have fans, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's not going to be like at home, comfortable and something like that. And also I was just thinking to this point, for the 4 games they've played, if you look at those teams, at least for now, it's been the biggest game for all those other teams they played. Of course, Murray State, Buffalo, they're not playing nobody bigger. I don't think Boston College is. Maybe they face Miami later in the year or something like that. But up to this point, they don't face Miami, Clemson or something like that, maybe. But even still,
yeah, I mean they had Florida State, but yeah.
Of course, that doesn't count as much now. But to this point, Missouri's been their biggest game, and then last week versus Vandy. Obviously, Vandy will continue to face more teams, but again, biggest game of the season so far. And you may be able to say that versus A&M, right? I mean,
I don't think so. I mean, A&M had Notre Dame there in the opener. They play Arkansas this week in Arlington. I might argue Missouri at home is their 3rd biggest game.
Well, remember what you said about Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame lost to NIU and was struggling versus who?
No, look, I don't think Notre Dame's any good. But when Notre Dame comes to your house, that's the biggest game on almost everybody's schedule. I mean, the biggest game on Texas A&M's schedule. We all know what that is. That's at the end of the year. That's the war that's going to happen the night after Thanksgiving. But I think if you asked an A&M fan, what's your biggest game before Texas, I think 95% of them would have said Notre Dame.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I'm more so thinking of like obviously the rankings and what projections are and stuff like that. And even going through that game, Missouri still will be. I think Notre Dame was 13th when they played, so I was going off that. But you're right. Notre Dame is still pretty much the thing. So yeah, they've been facing everybody in kind of their Super Bowl to the point in the season, and so maybe it changes when for once this game is kind of theirs, like because it's one of those big old hurdles they need to get over. So yeah, maybe being on the road will help them.
James, I know you said you weren't there on Saturday. Like were you happy you weren't there? Like fourth quarter, are you thinking, all right, I'm kind of glad I stayed and I'm watching this one on TV?
So I really do enjoy going to college football games. It's a great time, but from a pure fan watching football perspective, it's better on TV. I mean, you can see every angle. Where I sit, there's sometimes plays semi close to you, and there's sometimes you practically need binoculars to see what's going on the other side of the field. So yes, I was grateful not to be there. Although that ending was a great ending. I mean, kind of similar to Florida a couple years ago, but not the same stakes, obviously. But I mean, it was a great ending. And listen, Brady Cook in 2022, how many 1-score games did they lose? I mean, I think Florida, Auburn, Kentucky. I mean,
Georgia.
So, you saw over the college football landscape this weekend, OU, Auburn, Nebraska, these young quarterbacks, they were a liability for their team down the stretch there. And Brady did not turn the ball over. He didn't lose them the game. Now, he certainly didn't win them the game. Let me be clear. He made a great throw in overtime, but he needs to win them a game if they're going to have the type of season. I mean, he needs to be better than he was. But the thing I like about Brady is he doesn't make that catastrophic mistake. Now, we know he did at Georgia last year. That was. But outside of that, I mean, he's been pretty clean the last year and a half. And the record speaks for itself. 15-2 his last 17 starts. I mean, that's a pretty darn good record. I don't care what their schedule looks like. So they're closing out games, albeit against inferior opponents. We certainly want them to see them. They got to be better in the red zone. Gabe, how many great tight ends have you covered in your 20 years? I mean, you could probably rattle off 5 NFL players.
Yeah, I mean, Rucker, Kaufman, Agnew, that run, obviously, I'm sure.
Alberto.
Alberto, Eric Waters, I think, played a little bit in the NFL, honestly.
And we have this 6'7", 6'8", athletic, good-handed tight end. Why are we using them in the red zone? I just don't get it.
All right, let me be the bad guy here.
Okay, you can do it.
He's averaging like 4 yards a catch. I've heard a lot about it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Like maybe maybe it's the injury. Like, I'm not burying Brett Norfleet. He's 4 games into his sophomore season. I'm not sold that this year he's the weapon we thought he was going to be.
Yes. I feel like I told you I think it was during the game or sometime after the game or whatever. Like, last year, obviously he set himself apart from the other tight ends. Right now, they're kind of all in the same category. And I think Jordan Harris and Tyler Stevens have stepped up. And I think his ceiling is much higher. And, as time goes on, I think he will be better. We're not trying to bury him. But just through 4 games, what I'm seeing, he hasn't done anything when he's out there to make you think, tight end, just kind of like last year, like there's another weapon out there that could be in the passing game or something. It hasn't been that way. And you can kind of see that the shoulder is limiting him just by the way he's making receptions and the way he's falling to the ground. You can see he's trying to be a little bit more protective of it. And I mean, that's not his fault, but it's not clicking to how maybe some of the preseason hype was building up to, at least not yet.
The other thing I'd like to see out of the tight end position is, like, that's a place where, I mean, you guys remember the Arkansas game. He was so open on that touchdown pass. Like, there are ways you can scheme that position wide open, right? And everything seems hard for this offense right now.
Yeah.
Like, other than Nate Noel running, like, I don't see, and look, I'm not saying nobody ever gets open. I know, especially because people are reporting it on TV, I know sometimes there are open guys that Brady's either missing or not seeing. I get it. But, like, I don't see a lot of plays with just this dude that's like, 10 yards out in the flat and literally nobody's there. Like, I want to, they had one play, they had a wheel route to Marcus Carroll on Saturday against Vandy. And, like, immediately I said, that is a beautiful play. Like, that is a Kirby Moore, I just beat you. Right. And so
a lot of eye candy with Luther on that. Yeah.
Yeah. When your quarterback is struggling, sometimes it is your offensive coordinator's job to, I'm going to dazzle you with something that, like, we can't screw this up, right? And Luther did it for him in overtime. Like, it credit Brady for making the throw, but, like, I couldn't make that throw, but James, maybe you could have made that throw, right? He was like 8 yards open on a 25-yard touchdown. I mean, he cooked that dude as badly as Missouri's secondary has been cooked on a couple plays here recently. He was so you just need, if your quarterback is not playing well, if your quarterback is maybe feeling some pressure, I don't care if it's the OC, I don't care if it's your wide receiver, I don't care if it's Nate Noel, I don't care if it's Brett Norfleet. Like, somebody, I think, has to take the pressure off and say, all right, I'm going to go do something special for this team.
I agree. I think I'm all right. It's going to be in my column tomorrow. They need to give Nate the ball a lot more. I mean, he's got 46 carries in the last 2 games. He probably should have closer to 60. And I know that sounds crazy to say. There was a lot of time, I think,
like, he's not a big dude, man.
But if you go back to last year, his time at App State, there was a period where he had like 5 or 6 games in a row with like 24 plus carries, 100 yards. He can do it. He's got this on his resume. I know he's not a big dude, and that's why Drink is kind of like, maybe he's wearing the green shirt at practice and maybe he's holding out for some plays, but he can do it and he's been producing. And, like, I know everybody is on the Cody Schrader stuff and stuff like that, but like think about last year. Luther Burden was the best player. He's the best player this year. But to get him going, what helped? Having that running back who could kind of take it off, get the team down the field and stuff like that. So defenses would have to equally think about the run game as much as they think about the pass. They keep coming out, starting off trying to get the pass game going, and it's always a 3 and out on that first possession. Then in the second possession, they start running the ball, and wow, look at the offense go down the field easily as it can. Wow, look at Luther Burden getting the same touchdown 2 weeks in a row on basically a play action pass where he's wide open because they've run the ball 5 or 6 times in a row and they've gotten downfield. Like the formula is right there in front of them. They've just got to take it. And so if Nate can get you downfield, as well as Marcus Carroll, who I think has had a pretty good season as well, keep doing that. Keep running the ball.
Yeah. All right. We've talked a lot of offense, and I don't want to keep James here the whole hour. We all know there's been 3 or 4, like what happened in the secondary plays. I think this front seven's pretty legit. I think this looks – defensive line, linebackers, like I don't know if they have a star. I don't know that there's an all-SEC player, but I think this is a pretty good defensive front seven. James, like what have you liked or not liked or want to see defensively?
There was a point in the game on Saturday, and I had to read this twice. Vandy had -2 yards in the second quarter, but was winning 6-3 in the quarter. That is crazy. I mean, the defense really, and they did this against Boston College too. I mean, we can't just discount those bombs that Boston College had and Vanderbilt had this past week. But you take some of those plays out. The defense against the run has been very, very effective against run-first teams. And I think leading that way is Chris McClellan. I mean, he just looks different. That guy is a man among boys out there. And he's been a great addition to that defensive line. Christian Williams has been great. Marquise, I'm starting to see a little bit more out there, big 33. So, the line of scrimmage is always where I felt like the Tigers had the disadvantage in this league. I don't feel that right now. Even after subpar performances against, Vanderbilt and Boston College, et cetera, the PFF numbers, even on the returning starters, I mean, Mimbu's the highest rated offensive player on the team so far through the year, and 86. And then, which is better than he was last year. Even Cameron Johnson's grading out better than he did last year. And Connor Tolleson, I mean, have we heard his name much, which is a great thing. On the line of scrimmage, I think they've been very good. And that's something you really can't coach much during the bye week. You're not going to get bigger, faster, and stronger like in 2 weeks. But I think they can scheme things up. They can get some rhythm figured out on offense. Like the things that we know that they're capable of doing that we've seen them do in the last year and a half, I think those things can come back. I don't think Brady just lost his mojo. I don't think something Speedy Johnson I thought was going to be a real difference maker this year. I know he got banged up on Saturday, but have we even seen a shot to him down the field?
Well, there's been shots.
They took one in the first game.
In the first game, I remember 1 or 2, but I mean, they're not stretch that defense a little bit. But to Jarod's point, if I'm Elko, I'm absolutely selling out on stopping Nate Noel. Brady, you have to beat me if you guys are going to win this game. Prove it to me, because he hasn't proven it yet this year. Now, I mean, I guess you could say he proved against Buffalo with his 6-7 yard passes and passing to Theo Weiss to death, which was great. I mean, whatever you got to do to win. But if I'm Elko, I'm not letting Nate Noel beat me. I don't know what his average is this year, but after last week, I'm sure he's averaging 6-7 yards a carry practically. I mean, he is gashing people. And it's that zone run blocking that Eli's been doing for 5 years now, and it's working. I mean, Eli does not know how to utilize a tight end, but he sure knows how to do the zone run. And so, long-winded answer, I'm very bullish on the line of scrimmage, more so probably on the defensive side, which I'm surprised I'm saying that. If I was going back to August, I think I would have been more bullish on the offensive line. And I think the stuff on offense, this rhythm, I think it's stuff that they can still get back. But we shall see, to be determined.
Jarod, is this defense good enough to carry this team where they want to
go? Mostly. It's hard to say. Those busted coverages, so they've given up 6 touchdowns this year, I believe. 4 of them have been on blown coverages. And so, like, we talked about this in the press box, Gabe, like, the defense, each level has been playing really well. But when you give up those touchdowns and the offense isn't producing to kind of hide the fact that you just give up set a 65-yard touchdown, consecutive weeks, it looks worse. When the games are close and the offense and you guys aren't putting up points, it looks worse than it is. So, and that's versus Boston College and Vandy. When you get to Alabama, maybe Oklahoma or stuff where they're actually scheming up things and they're just scoring because, hey, it may have been just a great call or something like that. And because sometimes that happens. You can play great defense and they still score. That's one thing. But you add in blown coverages. I mean, again, you're doing this versus Vandy and BC. If you do this to other teams, you may look at, 2 touchdown losses or something like that. So I think the defense can get them to, 9 or 10 wins, but the offense has to pick it up. They can't be like this forever.
Okay, so I'm going to take the other. I think the offense can be this way forever, and here's why. A&M's not good on offense. Like whatever they are, they're not a very good offensive football team. Auburn's a mess. They don't even know who their quarterback is. UMass isn't a game that counts. Like that doesn't exist in my world. Alabama's good, but I'm already counting that as like that's a likely loss at this point. Oklahoma doesn't know who their quarterback is. They suck on offense. South Carolina thus far has been a very one-dimensional team on offense. If you can slow down Sellers in the run game, I think you can beat them. Mississippi State is awful. Arkansas is going to have to show me they can throw the football to beat somebody because I'm not sure they can. In other words, I think Missouri plays one good offensive football team this year. All year, I think they play one good offense. I think Vandy and Boston College are like 2 of the 4 best offenses they play all season. So I'm going to ask you guys, like, let's say, Missouri's averaging right around what? I take the overtime points off the board. Against Power 5 teams, Missouri's averaging 23.5 points a game in regulation. If Missouri averages 24 points a game the rest of the season, they end the season with what record?
10-2.
That's what I was going to say.
I mean, you made a great point about the offenses they're facing, but remember, you play these teams once. It only takes one Saturday for a team to be having their best day to throw that out the window, and now you've lost to someone you shouldn't have. Because to be honest, the only loss, I think we all agree. Well, I'm not sure, James, if you think they're going to. I know I've said they're going 11-1. Gabe, I know you've teeter-totter between 10-2.
I thought they were. I don't feel great about it right now, but yeah.
If we mostly think that one loss, the guarantee loss, is Alabama, 24 points a game. I mean, think about it like this. In 2022, they averaged, I think it was 24.8 points per game. That was like 85th, 86th in the country. The defense was clearly better, and they went 6-6. You can't do that. Like, this league is too good. Even the middle of the pack teams are too good for you to be averaging 25 points per game and thinking you're going to go somewhere with that.
Because I think what you don't account for, and it's kind of like what you were saying, like there's a Florida game from last year in there somewhere, right? Where that team just has a good day. And like if they average 24 a game, I think the only way they get to 10-2 with that or 11-1 is if that includes like a shutout at Alabama, but they go score 36 a couple times. Because like I think there's going to be a day or two, wherever it is, whether it's South Carolina, whether it's a surprise by Arkansas, there's going to be a day or two that this offense is going to have to go prove it can score 35 points to get to the playoff. Like, I think this team can get to 10-2 with the way the defense is playing, but I still think there's going to be a day that Brady Cook and that offense are going to have to go win you a football game because the other team's got something on you.
Let me add to that. If they go 10-2, and it's mostly because of their defense, we've clearly seen that style points matter. If you go 10-2 and you're having shootouts, I think you can slide in somewhere. Like if they have the same game like they had versus LSU last year, or just a really good game like they did against Georgia, you can slide in there. If you're losing these defensive battles and then you're averaging 25 points per game and you go 10-2, I don't think that's a playoff team.
That's fair. Offense sells tickets. We need to see more offense. That's the theme of the night. Hey, James?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So, hey, James, I don't want to keep you all night. You've given us half an hour. If you've got a parting shot on Missouri football, let's hear it. If you've got a quick, we try to point people your direction at the beginning of and end of every show. But if you've got anything that you want to highlight for people business wise, I want to give you that chance too.
Absolutely. Yeah. My uncle texted me this earlier. I thought it was hilarious. He goes, a few more weeks and Missouri could win its way right out of the top 25. A few more weeks like that. But you know what? I mean, I think where I'm sitting here on September 23rd, it's not terribly different than where I was at the beginning of the season from an optimism standpoint, because I'm probably a little bit more optimistic on the defense than I was. And the fact that we've seen this offense click before, and it's practically the same personnel. How many returning starters do we have? 8? I mean, it's practically the same personnel. So we know they can do it. I don't know why it's taken a month to get it figured out, but let's hope this bye week, and certainly that scare against Vanderbilt, it'll humble people real quick in that locker room. And maybe your subscriber's absolutely right. Maybe a road game is just what the doctor ordered. And then you have that UMass game. They can do plenty of team bonding up in Amherst. I don't think there will be a whole lot of walkthroughs left to worry about. And then, like you said, Auburn. I mean, Auburn. Wow, Hugh Freeze. I am glad he's not representing our university, because that was embarrassing. He just that is not a likable coach. And you had former players calling him out. It was a mess. And I think they had 5 or 6 turnovers against Arkansas. I mean, what a mess they are. And then if you can get to 7-0 going to Tuscaloosa, sign me up for that all day long, because that is house money. And Mizzou has not been afraid of the big environment the last few years. And I think they can give them a game at the very least. Alabama's very talented. I'll be eagerly watching that game against Georgia on Saturday. I think it's the first time Alabama's been a home dog in like 95 games at home, and they're a 2-point underdog. Isn't that wild to think about? But let's enjoy the ride, like Gabe's reminded us many times, and hopefully we can find some rhythm on offense and have a fun October, and then heading into that Oklahoma game, November 9th, I think it is.
Yeah.
Whew, that could be a fun one. So I can't wait.
So enjoy your trip to College Station. And because you mentioned Hugh Freeze, a friend sent me this right before we went on the air. This is Hugh Freeze on his radio show tonight. Quote, "I love Sam Pittman and I hope he wins the rest of his games. But I'm telling you that the hard truth is that if we play them 9 more times, we would beat them 9 more times. And that's what's hard to take." That is a humble man coaching the Auburn Tigers right there.
Well, gentlemen, you guys have a great rest of your evening. Thank you for having me on. I can't wait to watch the rest of the season, the rest of the show, and good luck to you guys.
All right, appreciate you, James. Thanks a lot, man, for taking some time. We really did have a lot of requests for James, so we want to bring him on this show now and again and kind of get his perspective. And look, when you do what we do, you get not only a little bit, kind of removed from what the fan view is, but you get a little jaded. We might be a little sarcastic and snarky now and again. So I think it's kind of good to check in on like what the pulse of people that like our world tends to be a little bit negative. Have you noticed that about message boards, Jarod? Is that something you've picked up on?
I didn't notice it.
Okay. Well, I've noticed. I've noticed that sometimes online comments tend to slant a little bit negative. So I think maybe that's not complete. I think if you just went out and polled Missouri fans on the street, most of them would express some concern, but would also say, hey, we're 4-0 and we're 11th in the country. And I'm pretty happy about that. I think the people that are engaged enough to be on our site or to be tweeting consistently about Missouri probably tend to get a little deeper and also, frankly, get a little angrier about things. So if I called this in 10 Thoughts this morning, Jarod, the biggest 2 weeks of Eli's career here, because I think he's got to get this thing right pretty quick if this season's going to end where it ends. And again, if they're 9-3, 10-2, and they don't make the playoff, it's not a terrible season. Nobody here will say that. But if they want to get where they want to get, I think he's got a lot of work ahead of him the next 2 weeks. I think Saturday, October 5th in College Station, I think that tells us a lot about where this thing's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, it is a good test. I'm just thinking, like, I can definitely see a world where they beat Texas A&M by like 10 points or something. Like I can see that more than I can see a loss in a way, but they very much can lose this game. And so that will be the first test, especially because you have a bye going in. Like, again, what more help can you need? I wonder, like, the test of the season to me isn't even the Alabama game. It's how they respond to that game, win or loss. Do
Right.
you, what is it? Is it the 14 season or something? Or I'm trying to think what season it is where they lost to maybe Oklahoma State or something like that. And it just, everything went off the tracks.
That was 08. That was
Oh, wait,
2008.
okay. Oh, wait. So, yeah. So a year they thought, okay, this is it. You have a big game, you have a letdown, and then everything goes, off the track. So I want to know how they respond to Alabama, win or lose. Are you drinking too much of your own Kool-Aid, which maybe they have been this first third of the season, or you finally get punched, you get knocked out. Can you like go back in your next fight basically and handle business? Because after Alabama is a bye week, and then you face Oklahoma at home. So
I think Alabama's great because it's like the Georgia game last year. Nobody's going to expect you to win. Only good things can happen. You go down there and lose, you're supposed to lose. That's not that. I think they play freer in that game. The ones that I think you get nervous about are A&M, South Carolina, Oklahoma, where, yeah, you could lose, but it's not like some people are going to pick you to win. It's not going to be like everybody is going to pick you to lose like they will in that Alabama game. I want to get to the questions we've gotten so that we're not here all night on the first night of the bye week. Christopher Barber says, my hopes were waiting to open it up like they did against Kansas State last year. I was at the game and kept calling out the plays to my brother. I'm not some football guru. It was just simple and predictable. All right, Jarod, do you think there's anything to, and this is going to sound more smart ass than I mean it to, but do you think there's anything to, they haven't called the good plays yet?
No, I mean, I don't think it's like a crazy thing to ask or say though, because yes, they basically did that last year, but the problem is, well, last year, to Christopher's point, it seemed like there was a handful of plays they were calling, and they're doing enough to win. They've done a lot of things. Actually, the first couple of weeks we were talking about, you can tell they're doing new stuff that we haven't seen, seeing what works. So I don't believe that one, because we've actually thought, all right, the reason this isn't happening or whatever is because they're trying new things. Defenses are, playing over the top coverage. They're not trying to let them get beat deep. So like there's that. I don't think that's the case. Do I think they've put out their whole playbook? Absolutely not. That I don't think it's that either. It's maybe a little bit mix of both. But yeah, maybe they were thinking kind of like how we were thinking to start the season to start to week 6. Now they shouldn't have been thinking that clearly, because look at, you're a couple plays away from losing 2 different games and being 2-2. So I don't know. It's a mix.
Yeah, I don't think they've emptied the playbook, but I think if the approach was conservative and let's not show more than we have to, that went away in the second half last week. Like, you had to go win that football game. However, I don't care if you had to call every play in your playbook, you had to win that football game. So I think the bigger problem then, and again, I think Christopher's question is legitimate. I think there's probably more there. But I think the problem is that to get to the more, you've got to execute the very basic. And they've done that. They've done that until they get to the other team's 35-yard line. But then they just quit doing it. Whether it's Brady misses a throw or somebody misses a block and the first down run that was going for 7 now goes for 1, or whether you pick up a penalty, it throws everything off, right? So I think to get to the point where you open it up, I think you have to consistently be able to get in the end zone. I mean, I don't know how many people listening read this when I wrote it this morning. This is one of the most mind-blowing stats that I think I've seen. In 4 games, Missouri has had 45 possessions. 36 of them have crossed midfield. Like, this offense isn't broken. They're moving the football. But then once they get across midfield, they're only averaging about 4.3 points per possession because they're settling for so many. They have 3 more field goal attempts than any other team in the country. Something once they get to about the 35-yard line isn't working. And that's what Drinkwitz has to figure it out. Whether is it something consistent? And you hope it's something consistent, right? You hope you can go into the film and go in this week and say, Brady, here's what you're doing. Or offensive line, here's the problem. Because it's way harder to fix if it's like, well, on this play, it's a bad throw. And on that play, it's a bad read. And on that play, our running back missed a block. And on that play, the guy ran a wrong route. Like, you would love it to just, he wants our message board to be right now. He wants to be able to go in and say, we're doing everything fine. Quarterback's got to be better. Because that's easy to fix. The other stuff's not easy to fix if it's a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, I think it's simple. Run the ball. I just run the ball. You get like you're saying, they're getting across midfield and stuff, but there becomes a point where go ahead.
That's not, I mean, you're going to hit a point pretty soon where that's not going to be enough.
Oh no, I understand.
You can't just line up and hand the ball to Nate Noel 30 times a game.
I understand that, but for now, it is what's working the most. It's what's working the best. And I think when they cross midfield, it's like they feel like a field goal is already guaranteed because they have a kicker with a big leg and they know they can get into the red zone. That's not the problem. They've been getting into the red zone pretty well dating back to the beginning of last season. But sometimes I guess, yeah, you could think it's a guaranteed field goal. So now you're trying to pass, you're trying to take the shot plays, or again, there is the offensive line, there's a mishap on offensive line, there's a penalty, there's things like you were saying that kind of hold them back. The only reason I keep saying do the run is because I feel like it helps multiple positions at once. The running backs are doing what they need to do, so they're producing. It gets the offensive line going to wear down the opposing defensive line, which I think makes it easier to do pass protection when the defensive line doesn't feel like they have a physical and mental edge over you. Also, it gives Brady Cook a chance to breathe. Like, not every throw is so much pressure. Not every missed throw or errant pass every now and again is put Drew Pine in the game, or is this back to 2022 Brady Cook and stuff like that if you start getting other things going.
Yeah, and Gorov says you can win that way. Michigan threw for 32 yards against USC and won. You can a day. You can win a game that way. Missouri won a game where they had 18 yards passing at Florida, and they won the game by 4 touchdowns. So, yeah, you can on a day. You cannot over the course of a season. And I think the emoji kind of indicates Gorov knows that. You're going to eventually have to throw the football. I agree with what you're saying. Like on Saturday night, I said, I don't know if it was on Twitter or the message board, I said, look, this isn't the time to fix the passing game. You run the ball to win this game. You fix the passing game in the next 2 weeks. And that's what they've got to do in these 2 weeks. They got to fix the passing game in these 2 weeks, I think. All right, let's go back up. I gotta find my place and get back to the questions. I know there was a question about Toriano Pride. And whether I can't find it right now.
I think I've seen it.
I'll find it and put it on the screen. Yeah, but are we going to see more of Nicholas Deloach? So what's your Toriano Pride stance here?
He's given up definitely 2, maybe 3 touchdowns. But besides that, I think he's been all right. There was another play in the BC game, I think, where he had a pass interference called on him that ended up giving a first down. But I think he's been all right. Do they play Nick Deloach? They may, though, because, again, you're giving up big touchdowns. These plays are, not only do they lead to points, they can boost the morale of the opposing team. Like you get one of those plays off, especially if you're a team that doesn't do that well, or you're not a passing offense like BC or Vandy. You start thinking we got someone we can pick on. I mean, we were able to do that, I don't think that's the case. I think he's better than what he's showing, but I do think they maybe, give Deloach a little bit of a chance out there. I don't know. They may get to the point where they've got to start switching things up, but the problem isn't really the defense. So I think for now, since the defense is largely playing well, they don't need to go there quite yet to me.
Yeah, I'd say two things. First of all, it's the thinnest position on the team. Drink said he was concerned about corner depth coming into the season. Nick DeLoach played 5 snaps on Saturday. Marcus Clark played 0. They basically play 2 corners. These guys are playing almost every snap. Also, kind of like what I was just talking about, if it's one thing, it's easy to fix. This Toriano Pride thing's very easy to fix. Keep your eyes on the guy you're covering. Don't worry about what happens in the backfield. It's not a hard fix, guys. I mean,
yeah, it's a discipline thing.
Immediately after the BC touchdown, you just knew. You're like, oh yeah, those 2 guys back there, they chase the football. All they got to do is stick with the guy they're covering. I mean, there's a reason in the NFL these guys never turn around until the receiver's hand goes up, right? You play your man. You don't worry about what the quarterback is doing with the ball. That's not your job. That's the front seven's job. So I think this is an easy problem to fix with Toriano Pride. And Toriano Pride, I don't have numbers in front of me, but it's not like he's giving up 6 catches for $140 every week. He's giving up one big play, and I don't think it's that hard to fix. So I'm not all that concerned about Pride, to be quite honest with you. Truman's Tale, why is it so bad for fans to be concerned about quarterback play? Bizarre to dismiss out of hand because of what happened a year ago. So I feel like this is directed at me, so I'm going to take it first. There's nothing wrong with being concerned about quarterback play. If you are watching this team and you think everything at the quarterback position has been fine, you're wrong. I mean, nobody is saying that. Nobody is saying Brady Cook has played his best football. If Brady Cook plays this way for 12 weeks, it's going to be tough for Missouri to get where they want to go. I don't think it's impossible, but it's pretty tough. All I have said is, look, he is the quarterback. He has earned that. If they lose, they're going to lose with him. This is not a guess on my part, guys. I've talked to people since the end of the game Saturday. Brady Cook is not sitting down unless, and this is a valid point, Truman's Tale says if he's injured, there's a legitimate concern. So you and I, Jarod, both watch that game in the middle of the game and go, he looks a little slower and a little indecisive. And then he had his ankle rolled on the sideline. Now, look, if we have learned one thing, if there is something wrong with Brady Cook, unless he is legitimately in the hospital, he is going to play, and Eli Drinkwitz is never going to tell us about it. So if he's injured, we're not going to know. I understand why people think he could be, but it's obviously not serious enough to keep him off the field.
I think why it's bad to look. I mean, you can be concerned. I feel like concern is still like a strong.
I think concerned is fair.
I'll put it like this. Assure you, I guess
There were
you could
some
be
bad
concerned,
throws.
but right there, they definitely some bad throws. Again, he did look slow, and this was before he rolled his ankle that I was saying he looked slow. I was saying it multiple times, like, and that's why I asked him after the game, was it the field conditions? I was trying to see if there was going to be a out to this, or because sometimes they'll just say, yeah, I did this, I tweaked some or whatever, and that, but he was just like, yeah, it was raining. It was a little slick, but there's no real excuse. So when he said that, I said, oh, all right. So again, if he was injured, he wasn't going to tell us. Drink wasn't going to tell us, how they feel about the competitive advantage and all that stuff, whatever. But I mean, he's got 946 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and interception. He's averaging 236 yards per game. He's still producing, and he's 4-0. This is still the, like, and another way you can look at it is if they're doing all this and they're still winning, there's a lot of room for improvement and you can still win. It's different if you're playing bad and you're losing, but you're playing not so well and you're still winning. And I think another thing that you should look at as a positive, they needed him in the end of 2 games in a row versus a ranked team and an SEC team to close out the game, and he did that. 2 years ago, that was a worry. That was a thing of 4 minutes left versus Georgia. What can you do with it? And you was afraid that the offense in a weird way was going to have the ball last. You don't feel that way anymore. So at least he's still handling it, in the clutch, and they can still fix the other problems before that.
That's the best point in support of him is you've needed him to make a play 2 weeks in a row, and he's made it. So I'll give him that. I feel worse about the passing game and specifically the quarterback position after this week than I did after last week. Like last week, I was saying it's not great, guys. It's not perfect, but it's okay. Saturday night was concerning to me. That was a team that came in that had given up a bunch of big passes. Missouri didn't hit any. There were some throws that just did. There were even times he completed passes that were sitting in the press box 2 and 3 seconds earlier saying, throw it to that guy. It looked indecisive. He looked a little tense to me. And again, maybe a week off helps that. I'm sure that kid, look, he has always kind of taken a lot on his shoulders with this fan base. Freeway Jarod, we'll get to your question. Appreciate the super chat. Wanted to put it up there. I'll put it back up in a minute. Brady has always been his harshest critic. I think he's always felt a lot of pressure. Going back to the Kansas State game last year and the whole, I just wish everybody wanted me to be the quarterback. Like he takes this seriously and it's important to him. And they all do. That's not I'm not being his PR guy. But so I say that to say it would be understandable if he is feeling a little bit of I don't want to be the guy that lets these fans down this year, right? In this season. I think he needs a big game. Like, I think he needs a game like Kansas State was last year. Like Florida in the fourth quarter was, which is just go out and don't think. Go out, don't think, have fun, and let it go. And they need a day to put up some numbers.
Well, I'd say, 2 points. One, to your last point about having a big game. He needs a game like he had versus Vandy last year. 395, 4 touchdowns. Right. It looked like anything he wanted to do, he could do. It would have been great, again, to do that versus Vandy this week that was giving up big plays to Georgia State, of all teams. But he needs one of those days more than I feel like he just needs confidence that he can do any pass on, that the team needs him to do. Second thing, again, to the point of he's the starter. I know Drew Pine is 16 or 17 for $117 and 10-2 at Notre Dame a couple years ago. Facing backup guys. He's a great backup to have. He's that veteran, backup quarterback that every football team wants to have because it makes the QB room stronger. It's not who they want. They don't want him to play. Not in that way.
Not right now.
That's not it. It's great if he's the backup. It's a problem if he's starting over Brady, really for any reason. So
other than injury.
That's more next year. Yeah, but my thing is if he's starting because Brady's injured, it's not that they want that. So it's more of a play for, next year. So it's not really what they want. So you should still be rooting for Brady.
The backup's usually the backup for a reason. Real quick, I thought James brought up the best point. If I am coaching against Missouri, if I'm Mike Elko, until proven otherwise, if I'm Hugh Freeze, if I'm Brent Venables, I'm going into that game going, I'm not letting Nate Noel beat me. I know they have these receivers that are supposed to be dangerous, but I'm going to make them throw the football over me to beat me. I'm going to put 7 guys, 8 guys in the box. I'm not letting that outside zone beat me. They're going to have to I'm going to put it on Brady Cook.
I see. Yeah, I hear you. And that makes sense, but I don't know if I would sell out completely. Brady Cook, again, 15-2. He's not some scrub. And
no, I'm not saying you just don't cover dudes downfield, but
I understand that. But selling out against the run is a real quick way versus this offense that really needs to find its footing. It's not that they're not talented. It's just I don't think they found their rhythm yet. And maybe that's just me being optimistic. But you sell out against the run if you want to, and you see Brady puts up 300 yards and gets 3 touchdowns because you thought you wanted to completely sell out for Nate Noel. That seems like a bad day for the other team. But I get your point.
It's 100% what I do. I'd make him go prove it. And maybe he will, like I said. All right. So Jared's question was, how come we can't have fun just like the Ole Miss fan base? Why do they have to make it hard on us? I think it'll get hard for Ole Miss at some point. But yeah, it was – the last 2 weeks have been more stressful than I think they were intended to be when this schedule came out.
Yeah, I mean, but it happens. I mean –
happens to a lot of teams.
Yeah, it just happens. I seen a question up there, and someone said something about if PFF says the O-line is doing well, then what's the real problem? Don't let it fool you. Don't let it fool you. I'm not as high. I just looked at these grades before we got on here. The first two, well, if you take in the first couple of weeks, yes, but I'm not. So when I think about Boston College and when I think about Vanderbilt giving up 3 sacks and giving up 8 tackles for loss and the pressure Brady's under and the reason he looks as hesitant as he's looking, I'm thinking about the offensive line. Like there's other issues, of course, but that is for me at the top.
Here's what softened my stance on the offensive line. And again, this is a PFF number, but this is not a grade. He has been pressured on 21.9% of his passes. That is 11th most in the SEC. Like Jalen Milroe is being pressured on 31.1% of his dropbacks, 10% more than Brady Cook is. In a clean pocket, he's completing 72.5% of his passes for 8 yards an attempt and 4 touchdowns. It's good. It's not it's solid. It's not incredible. When blitzed, he is 22 of 37. It's a 59% completion rate for 7 yards an attempt and a touchdown. That's actually pretty good. Their problems are coming when the other team can get pressure with 4. Duh, that's football. That shouldn't surprise anybody. I think the offensive line has been a little bit, it hasn't been great. I think it's been a little bit better than you think it's been.
I think we're still putting in the numbers from the first 2 games where they were facing people half their size, to be honest. These last 2 games, I don't think they've been great. And if you want to say, well, in the run game, they have been better in the run game, but the fact that Nate Noel had $199 and 45% of those rushing yards came, after contact, that tells me he's doing a lot of the work. Brady said it himself. He's making a lot of plays out of simple stretches and stuff like that. And that requires, a hole or something, or for things to open up for him. But that's a combination of his quickness, his vision, and him being able to make a move in space. Because Marcus Carroll is running the same scheme he's running. He's been running outside zone for how many years? And I know he's a little bit slower and stuff like that, but we've talked multiple times about not only is he a 1,300-yard rusher, but he's looked a little bit more spry and faster than we've given him credit for. So it can't just all of a sudden be like, it's different for one person. It's not when we think Marcus Carroll's a pretty decent back,
So I just looked up the Vandy game. Brady Cook was pressured on 11 of 43 dropbacks. That's 25.6%. That's still a below average in the SEC pressure rate. Week 3 against Boston College. What do you think the percentage of his dropbacks he was pressured on?
20.
He dropped back 31 times. How many times do you think he was pressured?
14.
6. I don't think it's as bad as I don't think it's as bad as you think.
Gabe, we've been doing. We're not doing it right now. We've been doing PFF for a minute. Are you telling me you think PFF
but that's not a
everything?
grade. That's
no.
That's not a grade.
I'm understanding that, but sometimes PFF puts out things where I'm just like, I feel like I can think of plays in my head that they don't put in there. It felt a little bit more than 6 versus BC.
Even if it's a little bit more. Okay, drop back 32 times, pressured 8. I mean, it's still a below average pressure. Like the average pressure rate is around 30% in the SEC. He's getting pressured less than that. You got to make some plays. Like, it's not going to be perfect. You got to make some plays.
He does. And we have said he's been hesitant and he's been indecisive. And some of these are on him. I guess I can't put it all on him. He has to make his reads and he has to throw the ball and he needs to throw it to where it needs to be. But I don't know. But I would also say in another sense, I don't think it's time to give up on the line. I don't think you need to start benching people. I don't think it's that. I just think it's been more of a struggle than you thought because you thought, all right, you're losing the All-American and a long-time starter. Here's these other players who seem like they can at least get you back to where you were, which is Joe Moore Award semifinalist, possibly even taking it further. And that's not what it's been so far.
Well, and we did talk about before the season, what if it's not as easy to replace Javon Foster and Xavier Delgado as you thought?
Yeah.
Like that was one of the things we said that could make this season, a little bit of an issue. So yeah, it needs to get better. Everything on the offense outside of Nate Noel needs to get better, honestly, right? Like, I mean, look, I'm gonna be honest. Luther Burden needs to get better. There have been 3 balls in the last 2 weeks I thought Luther could have / should have caught, and he didn't. So, and that's not singling him out, but when you're the All-American, when you're the Biletnikoff guy, that if that's what you're going to be, yeah, you do need to be a little bit. So I think there's a lot of things. The tight ends we talked about. I think everything on offense needs to be better. Quarterback is part of it. I would say it's probably the top of the list, but I also don't think I'm nearly as alarmist as some people are on the position. So it's, again, they've got 2 weeks to figure it out. A loss at A&M does not end the season, but I need to see this team play well. Even if they lose, I need to see this team play well on offense to feel good about the second half of the season.
There can't be no losing, only just because it makes the Alabama game
good,
more a bigger mountain than it already is.
I mean, look, we've known since the beginning of the season that 10-2 was, we'll see, right? That's still my bar. If they get to 10-2 and they're on the wrong side of the bubble, so be it. But if they go down and they can throw the ball and they play relatively well at A&M and they just happen to get beat for whatever reason, I'm not gonna hit the panic alarm. Now, I think logic says if they play relatively well and can throw the ball, they should win that game, right? I mean, I think if they lose, it's more likely we're going, oh, hang on, they didn't play well again, and we're now nearly halfway through the season, and we haven't really seen them play well. Yeah. So, guys, I know we didn't get to all the comments. I certainly appreciate everybody that had the comments, had the questions. We tried to get to as many as we could. We're already over an hour tonight here on a Monday night. But appreciate all you guys hanging out. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, do all the numbers have been better here these last couple months than they have been since we started the channel. So appreciate that. Spread the word. Let people know. If you're listening on the podcast, do the same thing. Going to let Jarod off the screen now. Appreciate his time and always appreciate our buddy James Carlton coming by. He's a fun guy to talk Mizzou football with. I was on the radio with him this morning and appreciate him taking some time to hang out with us and to make this show possible for you guys every single week. You can get in touch with James at carltoninsurance.net. You can call him at 314-961-4800 and talk to him a little bit about Mizzou football, see if maybe he's got a spot in his car to drive you down to College Station in a couple weeks. I assume he's flying. I don't really know. But talk Mizzou football with him. Tell him you heard about his agency here on Power Mizzou. He's going to give you a quote. I promise you he's going to save you money because he saved me money. He saved Drew King money. And he's also going to make a little donation to Mizzou's NIL efforts on your behalf if you tell him you heard about it here. So thanks, guys. This week schedule's a little bit up in the air because Missouri doesn't play Saturday. Maybe back later in the week, maybe next Monday. I don't know. We'll talk to you at some point.